Everything seems to be working just fine. Yeah, you read that title right. Today I was a parts changer. It's just how I had to figure this one out, I guess. So what we got here is a 2011 Silverado that recently had the driver's side head pulled off of it and had lifters replaced in it. No big deal, pretty common on these Chevy 5.3 motors, but the customer says that ever since then, I know we've all heard that, ever since you, but he said ever since then he's been having throttle body issues. And I mean, this was recently, like a week or two ago, this thing was took apart and put back together. So since then he's been having throttle body issues, setting throttle body codes and whatnot, and he put a throttle body on it and still has a throttle body code and issues with the throttle body going into reduced power and stuff. So, well, he was right. He had throttle body issues. And I was really struggling with this one, trying to prove a part bad. And I ended up being a parts changer to do that. So let me get back to the shop. The truck right now is fixed. It's running perfectly fine. It hasn't acted up not once. But let me get back to the shop and we'll go over what I went through with this truck. Alright, I have the truck back in its original condition, how it came, aside from one thing that I can't really undo but is irrelevant. And on our live data here, we can see everything is smooth and steady. Truck's just sitting here at idle. I do have it in gear. The parking brake is set, only because it seemed to act up the worst in gear. I don't really know why, but right now everything is smooth. You see it did trickle, like just changed just a little bit just then. This air conditioner running, that's not the issue. So let me see if I can make this thing act up again. And usually it will do it just kind of changing from one load to another load. Let's go into park here and see if it'll act up in park. Earlier it was acting up pretty good in park also. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a rev. And you see everything is moving how it should. So let's just let it sit and see if it'll act up. I don't really want to drive it because it will go reduced power and then it might not make it back depending on how far away I get. Let's just let it sit here, and whenever it acts up, I'll bring you back. Okay, it just done it. All right, if you see here in our throttle actuator control, do you see how right here our control went all the way up to 99 right here? Let's see. When we go back out and look at some of these other things, like TP2 did fluctuate a tiny bit, but that throttle control went to 99%. That's crazy. And then it's not set a code yet, but if it does that for over a second, it will set the code. And that's what I've been dealing with. Sometimes it'll do it long enough to set the code, sometimes it won't, but that, without any kind of throttle pedal input at all, is commanding 90%. See, it's done it a couple times again. You see just tiny fluctuations in the TP voltage. TP1 is looking to be pulled down, so it's like barely fluctuating at all. TP2, its scaling's a little smaller, so it looks a little more drastic, but it's not that big of a deal. It just did it again, 74%. And I can hear it when it happens. So let me go out under the hood and get the microphone close to it and see if we can catch the audio of it happening. There it goes. That was it. And it's actually went into its shutdown mode. As you can see on the scan tool here, we had a nice steady, flat line on this control, and then all of a sudden 99%. And if we get back out of here to look at these other data PIDs, we can see here we got disabled, and now we're in reduced engine power. And if we go out here, you can see there was no APP at all. It stays at 0.5%, so it's not an input problem. The ECM just, wow, it just for some reason said, hey, run the throttle blade. And now we're in reduced engine power. If we go out of here, we're going to have a code. It's going to be a P1516. There we go, P1516. I can actually clear this and it'll start running fine again. Back to running normal until it acts up again. Yeah, it's a strange one. While I was looking at this earlier, I actually took the breather hose off the throttle body to see what's happening, and I got a clip of it that I'll play here for you. I'm gonna go over a Pico capture that I took on this truck. I'm gonna try to go through this a little fast because it's hot in here and I'm ready to go home. But anyways, what I've got is channel A here, my blue trace, is on pin 1 or A of the throttle body. And let me see, I got the diagram pulled up here. So pin A of the throttle body, which is one of my motor control wires. Channel 2 or B is on pin B, the other end of the motor control wires. So these are on an H bridge, and an H bridge can basically send power down one line, ground the other line, or vice versa. It can flip those, and ground can be sent on this line and then power be sent on this line. So it's got a way to basically push the motor any direction that it wants to, and that's how it rotates the blade back and forth. So I've got those two wires, and then I've also got an amp clamp around this brown wire, pin A. It doesn't matter which side you pick, current's flowing through the wire, so I just grabbed one of them. You don't want to grab both of them, your amp clamp's not going to read, so grab one wire. So green trace here is my amp clamp, blue trace is pin A, red trace is pin B, and right now the way the H bridge is set is just sending power down to pin A, and it is pulse width grounding the pin B. And if we zoom in here on this, you can see it. It is fast, extremely fast. So from one pulse to the next is about 100 US. I think they call it a nanosecond. So 100 nanoseconds. You see the frequency here is 10 kilohertz. That's a very, very fast pulse width. And what it's doing is basically is pushed that motor into a position, and it's holding it there. That's all it's doing. That motor's not spinning. It's sitting there and held. And on our current, you can see that we're keeping a fairly steady 685 milliamps. This little section right here, it does dip down. If we look at our pulse width, let's zoom in back here again, real tight. We can see that we have a missing spot here. That's completely fine. It's more or less, you know, that throttle is pushed to say, hypothetically, 10 degrees. Well, it takes off this one tooth, or this one pulse, and that blade might move back to 9.8%, or, you know, something like that. And then it's picked up that pulse width again, so it's holding it there. And that's kind of how this is going to work. And as you can see in this capture, we're idling perfectly fine, and we'll have long sections like this. And then we will get sections where it acts up. So still idling just smooth as can be. And now you can see a little wonkiness start to happen. A little more, and a little more, a little more. Then we clean up for just a second, and then we get back to this wonkiness. And this is what we're hearing and seeing in that clip, that fluttering of the throttle body. And finally, let's get all the way out here to the end where it really goes haywire. Yeah. And let me get a different capture. This one right here actually has it up until it basically turns off. So again, we start off smooth, get some weirdness, and then it shuts down. This is where a code set, and it disabled that throttle body. And this is the capture that really has me puzzled. So right here at the beginning, we can see with our amp clamp something is going wrong, but it wasn't really clear to me what's happening here. And to be honest, the entire waveform doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But we get over here to these, and this is where it really doesn't make sense. We can see we've got a lot of hash in this voltage trace, which I'm not really worried about because we're dealing with a motor. So if a motor is spinning, it's actually going to produce its own voltage. Like if you take the voltage away and it starts to roll backwards because this thing's under spring load, it's going to roll backwards. Well, we're going to get some voltage created because of that magnetic field getting actuated by the stator, or however it works. We'd have to take this motor apart to know exactly what motor, how the windings are and all that, but you guys, I think, probably understand what I'm saying. And the thing that really threw me for a loop is I have a slightly increasing voltage here, okay? And down here you can see that we're not perfectly on ground. We got about 1.5 volts of voltage drop. I'm not too concerned with that because we have current flowing. Okay, you see here we've got probably around 5.5 amps average of current flow. So we've got a lot of current flowing back through the ECM. So this voltage drop I'm not too concerned about. And as you can see, our voltage begins to get closer and closer to ground down here towards the end. But the thing that threw me for a loop is if I've got constant power, constant ground, why is this current dropping? That is what threw me for a loop, and I couldn't understand it. And this is where I threw parts at it. This voltage drop on the low side to me seemed a little excessive. So I did test the ground on the throttle box or to the ECM, perfectly fine. Checked it, it goes down to the engine block, perfectly fine. Everything's clean and good. So I kind of looked at this and thought, well, maybe there's something going on inside the ECM. I don't really know for sure. I can't explain though why it started this. This is when it's starting to do that 99% control. Like the computer is commanding this. It is trying to move this throttle body for some reason. And I never really understood why. So I threw an ECM at it. Well, a lot of people that would be a big deal, but for me, it's not. I have one. This one is actually a bad module. Internally, this thing is shorted on the vent valve circuit and causes a battery drain because it always has the vent valve grounded, and the vent valve is actually fed battery power so that in the middle of the night or a sleep cycle, the ECM can actually wake up and command that thing on and basically do an evap test on the system. So this module's bad, but it's still good for testing. And it is the same that's in that truck. This come out of a Tahoe, a little bit older. It actually come out of an 07 Tahoe, but it is a E38. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but most of the time it's on the sticker on the back, but if not, you can look in the fins and it'll tell you there that it's an E38 or E37. I think I got an E37 over here. Yep. So E37, and let's see, can you see this in here? Probably not. Get you out here in the light a little bit. There you go. E37, E38. So I don't remember what this come out of. I think a Cobalt. I think. Not real sure. But I threw an ECM at it. Didn't change anything. I still had this exact same problem. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just messed up software. Maybe I cloned over the issue, because I did clone this. I didn't just program it. It's actually faster just to clone it. So used this little guy, the I/O terminal, and it was probably like a 5-minute job to clone this thing over, getting it starting and running. Whereas if I had programmed it, I would have at least waited 12 minutes for the keys to learn. So it was just easier and faster to clone that thing. Didn't take me much time. But like I said, Still had the same issue. So then I thought, well, maybe it is just a logic issue, corrupted data. So the next thing I threw at it was software update. I got my good old MDI out, updated the software. Guess what? Didn't fix it either. So I was really puzzled about this thing. I really didn't understand the waveform. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then once I really thought about it, it's like, what would cause voltages to stay but my current to decrease? Well, an increase in resistance, possibly. Then I also thought, well, this thing's also a spinning motor, so it has inrush current, and then as the RPM starts to increase, that current starts to taper down. So I was still looking at this going, I don't understand it. I don't see what is happening. And then I threw another part at it. Happened to have a throttle body off of a old core motor, and I did take and clean it up and stuck this bad boy on there, and guess what? This is what fixed the problem. A known good throttle body. Well, as you've seen, that's a brand new throttle body on there, but it is a aftermarket part store throttle body. So I spent several hours with this thing today, all because of an aftermarket throttle body was put on this thing. I even asked the guys, like, do you have the original throttle body? Because me, like most other diag techs, we want the original part because we want to see if the issue we're having to deal with currently is exactly the same issue that the part was replaced for. And in this case, when the guy went to buy the throttle body, there was a core charge on the throttle body. So what did he do? He turned his original throttle body in for a core. People, please keep your cores until you know the car is fixed. It's a whole lot easier to return a bad throttle body if you've got your original core. You can get your original core back and put it back on there and then drive back to get there, you know, whatever. Or if you're in this case right now, his throttle body is gone. I have no idea what his original problem was with his throttle body, but I couldn't confirm that we're dealing with two separate issues or the same. If we were dealing with the same issue, that would have helped a lot. It would have, in my mind, put me a little more at ease about the new throttle body. But since I didn't have it, I spent a lot of time questioning it, but also trying to prove out other issues, other things that could cause this. And from this capture, I was pretty confident I didn't have a wire issue. At first I thought maybe I had a fretting issue because of this voltage on the low side was getting elevated some. But then once I really started looking at it, I seen that that was probably just induced by current flowing, and if I've got current flowing, I'm not going to have a poor tension issue on a pin tension or, you know, terminal fretting or anything like that, which is what I kind of originally thought I might be having, was a fretting issue or a loose terminal or something like that, causing basically the motor to lose connectivity and then closing, and then the ECM going, hey, wake back up, come back, get back to where you need to be, because that's what it looked like. But then once I was diving into the current clamp side of it, I wasn't losing my current like I would thought. Like if I had a terminal issue or a power supply issue to the throttle body, I would have seen current dropping off at a much faster rate. So this current drop off, after putting the known good throttle body on there, I really feel like this motor was actually heating up to a point to where it was causing increased resistance in the windings, and then it was basically weakening and closing, ECM waking it back up, trying to kick it back open, get it back to where it needs to be, and eventually that even induced more heat until it eventually just crapped out. And this happens for too long and we shut down. The code states that it takes 1 second for this code to set and it go into a reduced engine power. And if you can see, we're on a 50 millisecond time base, so on the screen we've got half a second. So if we go back to this screen, well, here's 250 milliseconds. There's another 500, so that's 750. And another page, there's 170-ish. So we hit really close to that 1 second just by guesstimating on this. I'm sure if I really pulled out the measurements here, you know, we probably started about right there. And if I really measured this out, it's probably going to be really close to that 1 second time frame that the code states this would set. So yeah, today I was a parts changer trying to prove what I kind of was worried about all along. Some days it's just easier to do that, and when you've got the parts laying around that you can put on there that is at no cost to you or the customer. I mean, yeah, it's diag time, but if you've got them laying around, use them to your advantage. But it's pretty much all I got for you today on this one. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you guys later.